Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks for coming. Yeah, that's nice. So, yeah, I mean, each workshop every year, we get a new title about what is it gonna be about. Last time I came, I did something about practicing, and then this time, Fritz sent me that. What the hell do you do if you're a classical musician and get into jazz? Oh, okay. Well, let's do that. That's a good idea because if it is true. That's what happened to me. It's like I started, doing classical piano, and I really went basically the whole way. Aiming to be a classical concertist. I did Paris Conservatory. I got my first prize in piano, and I was about to start international competition to become a classical player. But in my case, I had the chance and the good luck of when I was about 8 or 9, so in the beginning or in the middle of my classical training, I fell in love with jazz. So I kind of listened to jazz. I loved it. And so what I did, I listened to it, and it was like a recreation for me. I was practicing my music, but then on the side, I was listening to jazz and discovering improvisation and playing with a friend, an alto player who was in my hometown, and starting to practice, trying to learn improvisation and do. So what happened in my mind is that it was two different things for me. It wasn't it wasn't like I'm a classical and now I'm gonna do jazz. I was basically really doing both things at the same time, and in my mind it was two very different things. And as I realized later, it is definitely two different things, because the approach is really different. And that's why a lot of classical players that I met later, who was trying to get into jazz, I could always hear a certain problem. It's like, well, it's not swinging, it's not really, they don't really understand, or what's happening. It's really like something is very different. So it's interesting. And so, well, at the time, the best reason I could come up with was really the approach of the music, like that in classical, really the main approach of the music is really a melodic approach, and the music is based on melodies, and rubato, for example. The name rubato is really classical. A classical expression which come to we use it in jazz, but that's a classical expression. Playing rubato is playing with the melody, and so whatever melody you have, the timing doesn't not that timing doesn't matter, but the timing is personal. So if you hear da 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 da, if you feel it this way, you do it like that. If you feel it da 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 da, if you feel it like, so that's the approach of the classical, And in jazz, it's not at all that thing. In jazz, the pulse is number one, and so you have you have the pulse, which is there, and then that doesn't move, and then whatever even if you play around with the position of your melody, you have to have behind like a pulse which stays with you. But okay, it's pretty technical, and of course, me saying that is not gonna teach you. So either you know what I'm talking about, or you vaguely see. If you vaguely see, you need obviously to get it into jazz listening to, and obviously you hear. So I guess you listen to jazz. So who is classically trained here? Okay, so all right. And now, for any style, we're talking classical, we're talking jazz. But now, let's talk about another style. You know, rock or Indian music or whatever. A different style of music. You cannot get into it without listening to it. That's simple, you know. I had people telling me, especially pianists, you know, was like after a concert, oh man, yeah, I really would like to improvise, and how did you know I want to improvise? And the first thing I always say is, well, who'd you listen to? And many times I have people say, I don't listen to. So, of course, there's no way, you know, to even think about improvise. I mean, unless you want to improvise classic, that's very possible, of course. You know, you love classical music, but you think, well, I want to improvise. Improvising is really, you know, an interesting approach. Well, you absolutely can learn to improvise in a classical style. You know, it's no one is stopping you for doing this. Okay, okay. Whatever the style we're talking about, first you have to love it. You know, I mean, to be, you know, if you really want to get into something, you have to love it. Listening to it means, you know, love it. If you listen to something because the teacher say I have to listen to that, it won't do much good, you know. But you have to have a certain disposition to whatever style. Even within jazz, you got many different styles, and everyone is always interested in a certain direction. So let your love direct you, you know, like what the style you love, and if you love everything, that's great. Okay, second is imitation. That's what comes next. You love something, you want to do it. So imitate. So now imitate is transcriptions, you know. Transcribing to me has been such an important one advantage of being classical player is that, okay, you learn the music, you know, more than somebody who gets into jazz right away, you know, maybe might learn to improvise first and then reading music later. As classical, like you mostly are, you learn music first to read, solfège and all this. So that's an advantage. That's good. Because now you can transcribe, so you can transcribe what we were talking about, what you love. You know, you can put it on paper. And putting something on paper is great because it's taking it out of your brain, putting it on paper. This is invaluable. It's really, the more exact you are, the more you see a certain thing in a different angle. So transcribing, you know, I'm saying on paper, it is important because some people I know are transcribing just by listening and maybe just playing it back. It's okay, it's good, but it's not as good as trying to really putting it on paper. I give you an example for that. I love Michael Brecker. You know, when we were actually in the 80s, when we were at Berkeley, you know, he was big, and I loved Michael Brecker, so I did transcribe some of his solos, you know. But I was like, what is he doing there? So you know, really putting it on paper and writing, understanding the beats. What I mean is putting the rhythm as exact as I can, and then trying to play it, you know, with the same feel or the same soul than what he was doing, on the piano. But that doesn't matter, you know. The solo is what it is. So, and suddenly I went in an ensemble in a class or something, and then I see a friend of mine who had the book, like Michael Brecker solos, like a publishing thing like that. So I was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. And there was like plenty of solo I didn't transcribe. So I said, oh, please, can I borrow this? And so I took that book, you know, and then I went over it, and then so I played the solo. And then like a week later, I realized, you know what? I didn't really learn anything from that. I really felt the difference. So I give him back the book, and I just kept transcribing whatever solo. It's just like by just taking that amount of energy to just really, it's like understanding something and putting it on the paper. I cannot recommend that more than that. Please, you know, doing that's really a great thing for you to do. And so that's imitate. You know, you first you got love, and then you have imitate, and then after that you have assimilate. Because as the story I just showed you, that's kind of what I was feeling. I was feeling that reading those things didn't let me assimilate it as well as creating. But assimilation is really something that takes its time. You're not gonna feel it. You're not gonna, you know, transcribe. I mean, let me even get away from transcription, but whatever. If you play in a band, or if you compose or something like that, everybody has its own pace, and assimilation takes a certain time. So you imitate, and then by imitating, suddenly your body will assimilate. You won't really know it. You won't really know you assimilate until you get to the next step, which is innovate. But you know, innovate is taking, you know, what you have assimilated. But your body will tell you that it's not. You cannot jump the gun and say, okay, now I'm gonna innovate, because it's not something you do. What I mean, voluntary. You know, it's like it would that part will do it by itself. So really, the only thing you have to worry about is love and imitate. You see, assimilate and innovate. Don't worry about that. You know, it's like it really does, and it does it by itself. And again, as I said, it works for every style, any style. You know, jazz, of course, being why we are here today. Okay, well. That's my little speech. about the subject we chose. We can have question about that or about anything else.
What do you think about slowing down sort of to transcribe them?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's a good question about transcriptions. Some of us have great ear, perfect pitch or whatever. Some of us has, perfect relative pitch. Some of us have bad pitch, whatever, and we all come with a certain set of gifts, yeah, or yeah, even a gift kind of gives it a certain weight, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, absolutely. Actually, slowing down is, in terms of piano, I know that in terms of piano, even in classical and things like that, to me, had always been something that is a proof that you can play anything. Like if you take the most difficult piece for piano and things like that, you can play it if you find the right tempo. If you make it as slow as possible, and then you can. Okay, so I mean that's the logic. Maybe it doesn't exactly work this way, but I remember always thinking of that logic. I say, I could take, any piece for piano, find the tempo where I can play it, and then every day I just put up one little step up, and then one little step up. It's a certain logic that kind of gives you confidence, right? So, same thing. I mean, transcription, absolutely. If you need, you make it at slow. Actually, I remember at the time I started transcribing, I had the the two I don't even remember what those things were called. Those magnétophone in French, like with the tape, things like that. What's that?
Tape recorder.
Yeah, tape recorder, and and then I had I was able to put it into half speed. Because I was transcribing Oscar Peterson, was like the first thing I was really into was Oscar Peterson, and even though I was kind of gifted with a good a good ear, that was pretty interesting, and sometime put it half. You say, what is he really doing there? And thing, or even sometime to really find the beat. Actually, I remember sometime I was like, it's not. I mean, the beat of if the I knew where the beat was, but I think to put it on paper, where is that note? Is that? So, yeah, that's absolutely whatever you do to put it on paper is absolutely fine. There's no. Does it answer your question? Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
The intonation in the orchestra, does it disturb you a lot when you hear improvised notes or something?
I don't think it bothers me more than I think. Okay, you talk about my perfect pitch.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have perfect pitch. With, by the way, there's kind of a sad story about it. I don't know if I should tell you, but when you have perfect pitch and then you get older, like I do, unfortunately it moves. So I'm kind of losing my perfect pitch a little in terms of the A, for example. Yeah, I'm starting to hear it lower,
Oh.
and it's an interesting fact. But good God, the relativity of it doesn't change. So it's workable. It's not too much of a problem. But anyway, no. To answer your question, that it doesn't bother me more than it bothers you. If you have two instruments not playing in tune together, I think it bothers everybody. Also, my perfect pitch, it's not like sometimes I see people say, "Oh my God, it's a little out of tune. I can't stand it." Or I don't know, but maybe some of it is little theater. I don't know, but because what I know is that your brain is adaptable. So for example, I had the point where I was invited at dinner or something, and they had a piano and say, "Oh, play us something," and then I start touching the piano, and the tune at the piano was kind of okay, but the whole tuning was like almost a half step down. So I couldn't play that there, even though I was trying to play a classical piece, so something that I had learned, but hearing it in a different key and being able to improvise, so I was suddenly getting into the key I was hearing, so I just couldn't do it, but I realized this because the brain, if my A, if the tuning is getting low enough, suddenly the brain thinks it's a half step down. Might be sharp, but and then it could have been maybe a little higher, and then I would have been okay thinking, well, it's flat, but I can deal with it. But if it suddenly goes into the next, oh no, now I'm half step down, so I just can't handle it. So brain is adaptable. So if something is flat or something is sharp, it doesn't bother me more than it bothers you.
Do you remember that when we did the Benny Golson All Stars, we had with the voice feedback, and he told the sound engineer, put the 330 hertz down in the equalizer, and the feedback was gone.
Yeah, because same, you can, if you hear the note, then you know what it is, and so well, if you just translate into hertz, 440, so you can just calculate exactly what it is. So, so well, I'll tell you a story too. Maybe I shouldn't tell you that story. Oh my God, it's going to be recorded. But I try to use my perfect pitch to avoid doing the army. I'm gonna, I'm from France originally, and when I was 20 years old at the time, not anymore, but at the time, army was mandatory. I had to do it, and I really didn't want to do it. I just had my prize in Paris, and then I wanted to go to Berkeley and things like that, do some jazz and things like that. I was like, I'm gonna do a year in the army. There's no way. And suddenly I heard, they pass you all tests, and then somebody told me once that, if they do hearing tests, and if you cannot hear, like, hey, watch out, like, watch out, there's a bomb, or, if somebody is talking like that, and if you cannot hear that, then they won't let you go through the army. So I was like, good, I'm gonna, I'm gonna do the tests. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna do the hearing test, and whenever it's over 1,000 hertz, I'm gonna say no, I don't hear it. You know, and then under, no, I'm okay. So I didn't want to. So basically, I want to play deaf, you know, but not that bad. I wanted to stay at, you know, so under 1,000 hertz. I say yeah, okay, and over, no, I can't. But you know, fate would be that the person who did the test didn't do his job at the time, and he started with over 1,000 hertz. So I say, oh no, I cannot hear that. And instead of doing a sweeping thing as I was told they were supposed to do, suddenly, boom, under. So I'm like, okay, yes, I hear it, and then, oh, yes, I hear it. Okay, next. So that was the test. All right. So I guess I would have been deaf. I would still gone. So that's how I use my perfect pitch. Isn't it a shame? But anyway, I did a year.
You have to go.
So I did. I did a year. Yeah. But I was pretty lucky in a way because I ended up with a colonel, general, whatever, who was really into music and kind of knew what a first prize of Paris was. So he was really. So I ended up kind of giving lessons to the things, and I mean it changed later. That's a big story, but anyway, I ended up throwing grenades then after that. But that's okay.
On which instrument?
On
Piano.
Oh, and then yeah, I actually took, I played some trombone at the time. You know, I did some marching too. I learned. I was always into trombone and sax because of jazz. So I had, I had a saxophone and I had a trombone, and so I was playing. But believe me, you didn't want to hear me because. The sound, you know, technically, of course, that was okay, but my sound has always been either on either the tenor or on the trombone. My sound was absolutely terrible. So I stick to piano. Any other question? Yeah.
Did you always use an instrument to transcribe? Or do you just sitting there and write the notes down?
No, I actually didn't use instrument. Yeah, yeah. I was well, yeah. For that, definitely, I used, you know, my perfect pitch. So it was easier for me to really be there with the paper. But I did use half speed sometime, as I was saying. But again, you can use the instrument, definitely. I mean, don't let that stop you. Like, what's important is really putting it on the paper, you know, and then you have it. I mean, it's written, you know, and it stays with you, you know. But if you just do, oh yeah, he's doing that, so that won't stay with you. So you know, 2 weeks later, it's gone. I mean, it might stay with you a little. It's better than doing nothing, but I'm really a proponent of putting on paper, especially being classical guys. You know, that's the advantage you have. You know, you don't have to relearn everything about music. About how do I, you know how to do a dictation. You know, we do that in solfège, so transcription is easy. And also about transcription, don't forget I was saying love is first. So don't, I had met some teachers when I was teaching, and they were kind of always say, oh, you have to transcribe this, and this, transcribe this, and I'm when I gave a transcription, I was always saying, make sure you choose, you choose, because you have to. If you transcribe something you love, really works wonder. But if you are forced to transcribe something, I don't know, it might be okay, but it's not my style. And also, even I would even say, don't force yourself to do the whole piece. You know, like it's like maybe you wanna transcribe just that one chorus or something like that, or if it's an easy thing that and you feel, oh well, that, you know, I'm fine, I would kind of understand, but that part I really don't understand. That, then just do that part, you know, just use it really as patching up what you what blows you away, you know. It's like, all right, and then you do that, and then you will assimilate it. Yeah. Felix?
So I was wondering about your classical background. Obviously, you have a great technique on the piano because of your classical training, but also you probably listened and played a lot more classical music than let's say other jazz players or arrangers. So how much can you benefit from it, or how much does it influence you when you're playing, but also when you're arranging?
Yeah. Well, it is true that I really did a lot of classical. Especially, I started very early, and we had a pretty big repertoire. You know, by the time I stopped, the reason, you know, I stopped. Actually, even when I stopped, you know, as I said, I was about to get into international competition, and so I knew that would really be taking all my time, and so that's when I decided to take a year off and then try to get into the jazz business, you know. So and I ended up moving to Boston at that time. The interesting thing I found was that my first years in Boston, I was really you know, into the purity of jazz, and so my improvisation at that time and that solo was anti-classical, I would say. I was going the opposite direction. I was like doing, you know, a simple solo. I mean, maybe it didn't sound like this, because later on I realized, I was like, oh my God, I really have a classical background. But it took me years to realize that. So later on, like 10 years after that, I started to accept my classical background again, and then do kind of a hybrid approach, and realize I love classical and I love jazz. So, you know, then I kind of used that. I have I kind of and even we did the pieces together, you know, Helvetic Suite and things like that, which is really a classical approach, but with a jazz quintet in front, and so mixing those two things have always been interesting. Now lately I did a solo piano CD, and it's called Beautiful Jazz, but I have a classical piece in it. You know, I couldn't have that Stravinsky piece that I thought I would put in there. So as I said, at first I really was, okay, now I'm deciding I'm doing jazz, so I was pushing away classical and really trying. I don't know if it was important or if it was if it helped me or not. But I mean, you asking me that question, that's what suddenly flashes in my mind. Is I remember I'm going against it, and then like probably about 10 years later, I realized, gee, what am I doing? You know, I don't know. Does it answer your question, or it's not the question?
Yeah, I mean, for some of us, it's probably a bit similar because kind of this classical training sometimes it can be a bit of a burden, let's say, because of like our rhythmic approach or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes we are really like trying not to think classically about
Right,
playing
right.
something, but actually I think still it's like a good foundation in music if you have
Yeah.
classical training. So there should actually be some way to benefit from it and not just
Yeah.
look at it as a burden.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we start classical early, or even it's part of us. So it's something we eventually. But maybe we meant to fight it. So I don't think there's a wrong way or a good way to do it. You know, it's like everything in life. You know, is really waves. You know, anyway we go so up we go against something, and then it comes back. Slapping you in the face. No, you know, and then so it's part of life, I think. So,
I have a question for you.
yeah.
So, when you, I mean, after all the classical studies that you did, okay, you then started, you parallel developed a love for jazz. Okay?
Right.
You transcribed.
Yeah.
But then comes the key element,
Mhm.
it's play.
Playing. Yeah.
Yes. Now you as a pianist, you can actually do it yourself.
Uh huh.
A horn player like us,
Yeah.
we need an accompaniment, okay? So we can do our own play-along tapes if you play decent piano.
Uh huh.
But what would be your approach or suggestion for these people
Yeah.
now? What's the next step to do?
Definitely playing with someone. That is important. Even me as a pianist, I did actually, when I got into you know, developing that love of jazz. First, you know, of course, it came from friends who played me some stuff, and then I remember I had a friend all along. It was an alto player who lived in my neighborhood, and he was also a classical, actually, a classical player who got, you know, the bite also for jazz, and we met, you know, in my room, and then we were learning together how to, you know, to improvise and things, and so we were playing, you know, playing different things. I remember we did a lot of Dave Brubeck at the time, which of course was, you know, for a classical player, a good thing. I mean, you know, musically the styles of now are different and things. And Brubeck might sound pretty old for you now, but at the time, you know, that was great. And so I started learning improvising like this, and so did he. And then eventually, you know, I met like a tenor player in my hometown, who was definitely a jazz guy, and I started doing some little gigs with him. You know, I mean, and being from a small town, it wasn't a big scene, so you know, he probably wasn't great, but it was a great learning experience for me, and so definitely, I mean, you know, transcription is your business, but play with people. That's very important. Yeah. And I think it's possible. I mean, you know, being a pianist, I don't even agree. You say, you know, you can do by yourself, but I think even if you do only by yourself as a pianist, you're not gonna go.
The inspiration is not all from the
Yeah,
other player,
right.
which is important. in
Right,
jazz, yes.
exactly.
But at least you have the harmony, you know,
Right,
which
right.
you can't do as a saxophone or a trumpet player or
Yeah.
a drummer, you know.
Uh-huh.
How is a drummer going to learn?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, for non-pianists, the harmony thing is important, and you do, then you got some people, like Brecker was the perfect example, who was, playing his saxophone and d- playing harmony with it, basically, like going and totally understanding the harmony of what he was doing, and kind of try. That's one thing for horn players, or to understand the harmony of what you're doing. It's like I know. You hear a great solo, maybe you say, "Oh my God, it's great! It's got," but being great is also in relation to what is done because of the harmony. So that's something you should think about. Have an understanding of harmony. So either by maybe dabbling a little into piano and be able to play a little arranger piano. I'm not talking being a pianist, but understanding a chord, a chord structure, how it moves up, and then now when you do your solo, have kind of that understanding behind you that will really make a difference in your assimilation and eventually innovation of your own soloing.
Yeah.
4 seconds. Okay, so no.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Christian.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you.